Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, at least on the live recording. Welcome. Let me just make sure everything's working. If you're here, say hi. Let's see. Welcome. Okay, let me just tag a few people. Quite a few people wanted me to remind you, so I'm going to tag people. Hopefully I'm able to tag. Oh, I don't think I'm able to tag. I'll pull it up on my computer. Anyways, if you're here, say hi. Looks like I've got 4 people hopping on already. Welcome. Oh, good. I don't have to tag some of you. Good topic today. Awesome. Let me see who asked to be tagged and is not yet up on here. Michelle. Welcome. How are you guys doing? Let's see. Alice, Jessica. Welcome, Megan. I thought I had done like a fancy invite, but maybe not. Let me allow your viewers to request to join you as a guest in your broadcast. Megan, that should be on. Oh, there you are. Watch this live video unless they're in your slideshow. Okay. Awesome. There you are.
Yes.
Welcome. This is so fun. It's so much funner when it's not just you. Let's see. I did want to talk about one little thing before we get started in here. I know a lot of people have been like wanting help with marketing, knowing how to market their online services now that everything's virtual, and wanting to know kind of a little bit more about like how to differentiate yourself when everybody else is online as well. And so because of that, I am a social media course. Hi, Paul. And I'm kind of doing a limited time bundle where you can get the social media course and my 5-day intensive for the price of just the social media course. So you get clarity on, how to use your social media for free marketing, no ads, no paying anybody anything, because I'm not a fan of that. And so you can find new clients online, where people are already spending a lot of time and need help and are, sharing their concerns. So if that is interesting to you, I'll put the link in the comments at the end. But also you can just go to themodernDogTrainer.net and find the programs page and sign up for the social media course. It's called Clicks to Clients, right? So that'll be really good. Yeah, I know. It's super strategic and action oriented, and really like a straightforward how to plan on using social media to generate clients at no additional cost, right? Like you don't have to keep spending money on ads. So that's really important for me. It kind of lines up with what I do, obviously. And then you also get the 5-day intensive, which really allows you to get clarity on who you want to help, how you can help them online, all the various ways you can provide support and help people that you enjoy working with and can afford your services. So yeah, really good stuff there. Everything for just the price of the social media course. So hop on there and check it out. But without a further delay, that goes on until Thursday at noon, and then it's that little deal is over. But I wanted to make that available again to you guys. 3 ways communication is critical to being a dog trainer, or a great dog trainer. I feel like you can't be a great dog trainer unless you know how to communicate, right? And I just unplugged my computer. So I want to talk about that today because I think that communication is a little bit different online than it is in person. And I really want to highlight that and kind of enable people to be a little bit more conscientious and aware of that, and do an even better job than they already are. So I think we have some good stuff to talk about. And I know you do too, Megan. This is really like your area of specialties. So I think the number one thing is, let's do introductions first. I'm all over the place today. So if you guys have not joined a live yet, my name is Ines McNeil. I'm the founder of the Modern Dog Trainer blog and podcast, and everything else that's kind of evolved to become. And then we also have Megan here, who's kind of joining me in teaching, my audience and my community around communication specifically, and how to be a better communicator and have happier clients and better clients, because that all leads back to communication for the most part, is really how you set them up, right? So do you want to do a little quick intro about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Like she said, my name is Megan. I live in Colorado, and have been doing stuff with dogs most of my life, and eventually led me to dog training. And I really just got interested in how we communicate with our clients and how that affects our ability to help their dogs. I like to say that I've never met a dog with a checkbook. So if your goal is to help a lot of dogs, you have to help their guardians, which are people. And so that kind of led me to doing a lot of self-reflection, figuring out what it is that I do to connect with my clients, watching other trainers and how they communicate with their clients, and just to develop some great information for you guys to try to better yourselves in that way, because I think it's something that we're always all working on.
Yeah. And we have a fun little announcement for the end of this. We'll talk about that little thing we have coming up next week. But first, really, let's dive into some, really important points here on, the ways in which communication influences the results that you have in the dog training that you provide. And I think the number one thing is that, your human clients have to understand as well, like what you're teaching, as well as, the dogs. The dogs are easy for us, right? Yeah, they need to, the humans need to understand it better, so that they can see those amazing results.
Right.
And, great results obviously lead to more referrals, ongoing clients because they're happy, all kinds of good stuff. So communication kind of winds itself in there. Really, I think it's not something that anybody really starts off consciously aware of. It's just something you kind of come across when you start hitting walls when you're talking to clients, and they're not getting it, and you're like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah, I think that's really the key, is that a lot of people, when they start feeling frustrated with their clients, and I see it across the pet industry, and of course I'm sure it occurs in other industries, that's just where my experience is, but when you start really feeling frustrated with the people, that's something, and we've talked about this in courses that I've taken with you, that's something you can't control. The other person's behavior is not something that you can control. And so you have to decide how it is that you're going to respond to that in order to, make that connection and make that change, because you can't just wish that they were behaving differently. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Exactly. And ultimately the people, not only just their behavior and like how you are instructing them to work with their dog, especially virtually, that's really important, but how you set the people up to be successful by communicating your expectations, and also communicating the value in doing the work that you're asking them to do. So the motivating factors that are behind that
what
really
are they going
leads
to get
to
out
better
of
compliance.
What are they going to?
So
I think it's one of my early mentors used to always say, if you give them exercises that they can't accomplish, you haven't helped the dog at all.
Exactly.
That you've spent your time, you've spent their time, and nothing's actually happening because they don't feel like they can follow the instructions that you've given them for whatever reason. And that comes back to how you communicate your expectations, and I think managing our own expectations. We would like everyone to, be the best dog trainers possible, but they've got lives going on. They've got other stuff. There's a reason that they're not professional dog trainers. And so you have to manage your own expectations so you don't feel disappointed in your clients that,
Yeah.
they didn't make all this progress. Well, are they happy living with the dog? Do
Yeah.
they feel less frustrated on a daily basis? That's what our real goal should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, one particular client comes to mind, was one of the more recent clients that I worked with, up here in New York, a few years ago. She had not been upfront about her mechanical abilities, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Her ability to do what I was asking her to do. It was all during the lesson, it was all, yes, yes, I can do this, I'll just keep working at it, I'll get there. And then, we had the second lesson, and I hadn't seen much progress, and it didn't come down to, her anything she was doing wrong. It was just that I did not communicate well enough to, make her feel comfortable about sharing some, physical challenges that she
Mm-hmm.
experienced with the mechanical skills that I was asking her to learn. And so I think that also comes down to communication. The dog was
Yeah.
not able to progress. I wasn't able to get the results that I was expecting, because the communication barrier, whatever was there,
Mm-hmm.
didn't allow us to have that conversation. And it was normal because obviously it's the first lesson, so you don't want to be necessarily that vulnerable with somebody right off
Oh,
the bat, but
of course.
setting up a space in which the client feels safe and comfortable sharing things like
Mhm.
that will make you more successful as a trainer, right?
Absolutely. And more
Yeah.
caring and compassionate in a
Yeah.
way that, if it's a disability that someone's dealing with and they feel that they can trust you to talk to you about that,
Yeah.
like you said, you're going to make much better results, but you're also going to be able to come at that in a way that is, like I said, more compassionate toward what they're
Yeah.
going through.
Oh, totally.
So yeah,
And
absolutely.
it was definitely something that was, easily fixed as soon as I knew,
Yeah.
what the challenges were. It was a really, really quick fix and change. But
Yeah.
yeah, having that communication is the challenge that prevented
Mhm.
us from getting there faster. So that's really, really important, to understand that the way you communicate and the space that you set up for your clients to communicate in, is really important to see the dogs do well.
Yeah.
When it comes down to, it's not
And
just the
sometimes
dog,
I'll just ask,
unfortunately.
oh, I was just going to say, sometimes I just ask my clients directly something like, what do you think is getting in the way of you practicing, right? If they just
Mm,
say, oh, I just haven't practiced, instead of thinking to myself like, ugh, these clients, they never want to practice.
yeah,
I'm like, well,
yeah,
what is it? And if they say, man, I just feel so busy, here's a way that you can do 1 to 3 minute lessons, paired with something else that you do in your daily routine. Look for
yeah.
ways to make it work with their schedule. If it's that they say, I feel overwhelmed and I don't know if I'm doing it right, well, then you know that you didn't explain it in a way that kind of met their needs. And so, really talking to them and getting that feedback from them is helpful as well.
Yeah, yeah. And then it kind of leads me to, especially with following through on homework, there's a lot of things that you have to kind of break down as far as what people believe they're capable of doing,
Mm-hmm.
um, the assumptions they have around their abilities, around their family's abilities
Mm-hmm.
to cooperate. There's so many things you have to overcome, that are beyond just the mechanics.
Oh,
Right.
for certain. Absolutely. And I tell
Oh.
people find that success, right?
Hmm.
If you're working with a client, don't just keep saying, well, this is where we start. Like if you have to back it up 10 steps and just
Yeah.
give them the teeny tiniest little baby step, just like we would with a dog who's not understanding something that we're saying.
Yeah.
If you can get them to do one little piece of the mechanical skill right, start
Right.
there, right? Like make
Right.
them feel great about the fact that they accomplished that step, even if it
Yeah.
seems tiny to you.
Exactly. And for instance, I'm thinking back when I've definitely had some clients where, I'm trying to teach them clicker training and stuff like that, and they can barely hold a leash. Right?
Yeah.
They don't even know how to give the dog a treat. They're like,
Mhm.
or I don't even know,
Yeah.
it's so easy for us. That
Mhm.
stuff is so easy, and we make it look easy. And so
Mhm.
you really want to make sure that you are, making it as simple as possible. And also if you have to start off by teaching them how to give the dog a treat,
Mhm.
do that. It's
Yeah.
you can't go back too far. You have to
And
start
and
where
don't
they are.
don't make, do your best not to make them feel bad about that, that's
Right.
something that you have to
Yeah.
step back, because, if you even just have that little attitude in your mind about like, oh, well, I guess we'll go back, because this
Yeah.
is too difficult for you. I mean, of course, we wouldn't talk to our clients like that, but even if you just kind of have
You can
that little
feel it.
thought in your head, it
Mhm.
changes your delivery and it changes
Yeah.
how, and so really coming at it like, oh, I know holding a leash is a
Mm.
skill. It's
Yeah.
something you have to learn. And I tell my clients that all the
Yeah.
time. This is a skill you have to learn so that they don't feel self-conscious like, how do I not
Right.
know how to do this? Well,
Right.
because you haven't learned. It's okay.
Yeah.
And making them feel okay about those sorts of things is important.
Exactly. Yeah. Not all of our clients have grown up handling hundreds of dogs over the years.
We kind of forget.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. So, let's talk a little bit about how blah blah blah. Unclear communication leads to non-compliance, or failures in compliance, and that is, not doing homework, but also not doing the training correctly, or falling back on other techniques that you wouldn't necessarily recommend. Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about like how that might work?
Sure. And I think one of the biggest things that I think that trainers struggle with in terms of compliance can be management right from the
Hmm.
start.
Hmm.
That when we say you should set this in place to prevent your dog from doing X behavior, and then they just don't do that, right? It kind of feels like, well, this was the first thing you had to do, right? This is the
Yeah.
beginning of the training.
Yeah.
But I think really realizing that sometimes those asks of management are bigger chunks than we think. So, things
Hmm.
like using a crate. Well, if they've never done that before, then we got to start way further back.
Right.
So non-compliance often I think comes from overwhelm,
Hmm.
right? So we give the client just too much to think about, and they feel like they just can't handle it. Another thing I think is communicating the consequences in a way that you're not trying to use scare tactics, or you don't want
Right.
to be trying to make it seem like you're a terrible owner if you don't do these things, but really being
Right.
clear about like these are the things that can happen if your dog continues to escape out the front door, or continues to jump on your guests, or whatever it is. It can be a small behavior problem or a larger one, but letting them understand what the consequences are for non-compliance in a way that
Hmm.
they can actually hear and understand. So, breaking it
Yeah.
down and making sure they understand what um, kind of what's at stake. Like I said, I don't ever want to try to be fear tactic, fear
Hmm.
mongering. But I think that's extremely important in terms of, that compliance aspect of it, is making sure they understand why we're asking them to do these things. It's not just an arbitrary, I
Right.
believe every dog everywhere has to be in a crate. But if your
Right.
dog is, ingesting things that are going to cause an obstruction, we
Hmm.
absolutely have to start with management. You
Yeah.
cannot allow your dog to keep doing it. So, you really have to kind of look at the individual and see what those consequences are, because it is very different case to case.
Yeah. And like in that particular situation, what comes to mind is kind of having to overcome the beliefs that people have. What kind of fears or assumptions do they have about the crate, that maybe they don't openly say, like they feel bad about putting the dog in there,
Mhm.
and that can definitely affect training.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
they can feel bad about all kinds of things and whatnot. I'm trying to think of what else, like along those lines. Also giving them the expectation of what to do if something's not working. I feel like we
Yes,
make the assumption that they'll just reach out to us if something's not
right.
going right.
Yeah,
Come to find out, no, they may just be, falling back on old habits that, put a band-aid on things instead of actually solve the problem. So,
or
let
the
them
caller
know.
their coworker recommended to them and said, "Oh, this will
Yeah,
fix it," instantly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So give them an out, give them an
Yes.
explanation, a path to follow if something's not working, if they're having challenges with anything,
Mhm.
if they have questions, like tell them what they need to do to
Yes.
be in contact with you to find a solution quickly and get past that, because otherwise They may not assume that they're allowed to call you or talk to you. They may not, they don't want to look bad, you
Mhm.
know, all kinds of things. So if you're expecting communication with them, tell them. You may even want to say like, hey, I'm going to reach out in a couple days and see how things are going,
Yeah.
and open up that conversation with them outside of the lesson. I think is really important.
Yeah, and I was going to say two things on that. One is that I often give my clients a specific amount of time, like
mm,
try this for X
mm,
amount of time. If
yeah,
you are not seeing progress, we need to reevaluate and figure out something that is going to work, because
yeah,
people don't feel good trying. I mean, that's one of the reasons people are going to stop is, I might say to someone, this is going to take a little time to become effective, right? Like before you
hmm
actually see, oh, my dog is more manageable on leash. It's not going to happen, instantly, but I
hmm
give them a reasonable amount of time that they should be able to see change. Not that they've
right,
fixed anything. You're not making promises of, everything will be perfect by this time. But if you're not seeing significant behavior change by this time, we need to change something and we need to reevaluate. Giving them
right,
kind of a specific timeline, I think, helps. And one of the
hmm
things, kind of teasing into the idea of online communication, that I've decided that I really want to utilize platforms like Zoom to do those check-ins in between. Because
hmm
one of the problems is that so often really what I need to know takes 15 to 20 minutes to talk to them. It's not that I
right,
need to show them necessarily new exercises or,
right,
have eyes on the dog. I just need to say, is this working? And
yeah,
I want to know if it's working for you or if it's not. And I think that's one area where that I'm definitely going to keep from
yeah,
all of this, is
awesome,
to utilize, because I've always joked with people, like, it would be great to do 15-minute sessions, but that would eat up all my driving time, right? I can't
hmm
just drive to different people's houses for 15 minutes and say, checking in,
right,
how things are going, great. But everyone knows how to use Zoom now.
yeah,
So they don't have any excuses.
I love it.
So yeah.
I love it. That's fun. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And then also letting them know, like when if you do check-ins, like telling them during the lesson that you're going to be checking in and making sure that it's not like, you're not doing it to like look over their shoulder, right? You're
Right.
doing it to make sure they're being successful. So
Absolutely.
that's important to communicate. And then the last point is, communication is critical for your clients' experience with you as a customer and building, referral networks. So not only can you master your communication to make sure you get better results, but you want your clients to know what to expect from you and like a logistics side of things, like how to schedule calls, how to schedule appointments, when they should communicate with you outside of lessons, all that kind of fun stuff. And then also, communicating with your clients, like at the end of a lesson or at the end of a program, like what is it you want them to do?
Mhm.
Communicating your expectations for having them leave reviews or building like word of mouth, like referring to friends. Like you have to make sure you're communicating all of that in a way that is encouraging and exciting and fun and beneficial for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that all kind of comes back to that expectation setting, for both the clients and for
Yeah.
ourselves,
Mhm.
and being really clear. Because if you aren't clear on what your expectations are, like for instance, with your onboarding process that you always talk to people about,
Mhm.
making that more clear. If you're not clear on
Yeah.
what you want,
Yeah.
how can you possibly expect that someone is going to know what information they're supposed to be giving you?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's really important to do that self-reflection and know what you expect of your clients and what you expect of yourself.
Mm.
And then you can start to do some good expectation setting. And it really does make all the difference in their client experience, because,
Yeah.
we're dealing with people who are not necessarily at their best in this moment, right?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, there are, of course, those wonderful unicorn clients that just say, I just adopted this dog and I just want to, be on the right path and it's a great dog.
Or
And
or they're thinking of adopting a dog.
right, yes.
They've
Wouldn't
already
that
signed up
be
for
nice?
training.
um, but really,
Yeah.
most of them, I have gotten calls where the person is literally outside chasing their dog as they're talking to me. They're
Yeah.
like, my dog ran away again, and I've had my
Mhm.
card on my fridge, had your card on
Mhm.
my fridge, and hadn't called yet, and now I'm
Yep.
calling because I cannot handle this again. And they're not
Yeah.
they're not at their absolute best. It's not the same as when they're
Yeah,
communicating with, you know, a loved family member or a best
right.
friend or something like that. And so I think we have to understand that that their client experience is really important, that we're not just kind of brushing off that fact that they're going through something right now, right? Like
Yeah.
they had a different image in their mind of what life with a dog would be like.
Yes.
Most people, I mean, I do run into people who are like, I absolutely understand that training is necessary and that, you know, we have to
Right.
put some work into this. But I think that, you know, Jean Donaldson nailed it when she said that people have this Disney dog
Yes,
idea in their mind of
they
what a
do.
life with a dog is going to be like. And sometimes dogs say, nope, we're gonna teach you some lessons about what life with dogs really is.
Yeah.
So they're accepting that and going through something
Mhm.
and dealing with their own kind of mixed expectations. So I think that's really important
Yeah.
to acknowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the faults that I can see that I had you know, when I was first starting out as a trainer is I left it up to the client how the experience was going to be. I did not take a
Mhm.
leadership role in the planning of, you know, how things should be, when they should happen, all of that, you know, the logistics of things. You know, I let them schedule whenever, I let them, you know, call me whenever, you know, and it left for, you know, now looking back and understanding how the client and, you know, service provider relationship is like, probably was not a great customer experience because, you know, nobody wants to sign on with something and then have to make all the decisions or just kind of fly by the seat of their pants, you know, and not know what's going on. So you wanted
Right.
to take that leadership role and communicate the expectations.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, they're calling you as the expert.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
So
be the expert, be the leader.
you know, they're like, you should know what we need to do here. And of
Yeah,
course, it is important to take into account their, you know, that they may not be able to follow that plan exactly and to be
right.
flexible with it when it's needed. But again, communicating, okay,
Hmm.
well, if we have to go 4 weeks in between these sessions because you have a vacation,
Hmm.
then here's what you can expect from that, right? Like
Yeah,
you may not make the same, you know, you may not keep the same momentum up. A lot of times people fall off of their practices, you know, if they go on vacation and come back, whatever it is, you just talk to them about, you know, your progress may change based on the decision we have to make right now. And being
yeah,
very clear in that, I think is important.
yeah. And then the other thing we haven't even brushed on is just dealing with like family relationships, like, you know, when
Oh,
we're talking about the stress that people are in. I
yeah.
know, fun topic. When we're talking about the stress that people are in when they decide to sign up for dog training, you know, I'm talking to people that maybe, you know, they're in a relationship, they just moved in together and their dogs are fighting. I remember I had a Shar
Yep.
and a couple of little dogs, and that was a fun time. And I mean, they couldn't even agree on whether or not they wanted the dogs on the couch.
Right.
It was pretty much like being a counselor, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then there was a client, you know, where come to find out after, I think it wasn't even on the first lesson, she disclosed that, oh yeah, the training was court ordered. Thanks for the heads
Oh,
up.
mhm. Yeah.
So that's why really, really understanding your client and getting to the bottom of things and addressing the, you know, human emotional fears and obstacles that they face as just like living their life in addition to dealing with their dog, is really, really important. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think on that note, my biggest advice is just really building up trust and trying to create a safe space for people, not
Hmm.
necessarily trying to change that dynamic because that's
Right.
not your job and you
Right.
cannot, you know, most of us, unless you have additional training, are not trained in family therapy and that sort of thing as
Right.
well.
Right.
And I think it is important to discuss with them when they need to, you know, okay, everyone has to be on the same page here. But, you know, I remember working with a client who it was actually a really sad case because it was pretty clear that she was really afraid of her husband.
Mm,
And she
yeah.
specifically asked if we could have lessons in his absence. He was using an e-collar on the dog. The dog was aggressing toward him, but
Yeah.
she said there's nothing. I'm like, of course, we're not going to really change that. but
Yeah.
she just wanted some advice on how to possibly start to help this dynamic a little bit and not have
Mm.
it, spread. And it was one of those
Yeah.
cases that it was really tough to, I knew we weren't going to make what I would have thought of as like the kind of progress we were looking for. It
Right.
was almost like
Right.
just trying to plant little seeds, but
Yeah.
she was worried that he would find out about the whole thing. It was a really tough situation, but
Wow.
it was one that I felt like um, it was valuable to her in learning that he wasn't right in what he was doing to the dog, which probably hopefully planted a different sort of seed that his behavior just wasn't right in general.
Yeah.
But I just think that sometimes we get too much in our minds about like what success has to look like. I've heard of people who are like, I won't work with a family unless everyone in the family is there every time.
Right.
Well,
Right.
that's really tough for scheduling with a lot of people, and
Yeah.
that makes training really inaccessible when a lot of times one person has said, I will take on the majority of the training roles and
Right.
I will, teach the family and we can have some lessons all together. I think sometimes flexibility is important just because people's lives are complicated,
Yes.
man. There's a
We
lot
know.
going on there. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys found this helpful. I had a really, really good time talking about this topic, and I know Megan did too. So, we actually have a fun little thing in store for you guys next week. In addition to our Facebook Live on Tuesday, we're going to be hosting a little webinar. So maybe Megan can talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'm going to be hosting but it'll be like a 1 hour webinar, 45 minutes of presentation, and then a little bit of question asking and that sort of thing, which is always my favorite part because I like hearing how people want to apply this sort of thing. All about client communication, some of the roadblocks you might run into, what it is that your clients really need from you, especially in these kind of crazy times. I
Yeah.
know that's starting to sound a little cliche, but no, no other way to put it. And talking a little bit about online communication and how that differs from what we are kind of used to of this in-person training. One of the things I think is the most important and kind of neat thing about improving your communication online is that it will absolutely cross over and make you a better communicator in person.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
one of the things that we do is we kind of fall back on these crutches of being able to take the dog and demonstrate something, or the way we're talking to people is a little bit different in person. And so I think that if we really learn to hone those skills online, you're just going to get that much better when you are back to in-person stuff and teaching classes and that sort of thing. So there's really no downside to learning to improve your online communication.
Yes, yes.
Anything else you want to add on that?
It's gonna be Wednesday night.
Yes.
Next Wednesday after it's gonna be after Memorial Day, that Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Let me look at my calendar. The 27th.
27th, yeah.
In the evening, and the recording will be sent out to people that have registered. So even if you can't make it live, definitely sign up so you can get the recording. That'll be available for about a 24-hour replay. You can sign up at moderndogbusiness.com. And the information's right there on that page. So, yeah, it's
Before we
gonna
go,
be
I
good.
saw a question come up.
Hmm.
Do you mind if we answer that really
Okay.
quick?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So yeah, so someone asked if we suggested intervals to check in, like 2 days in a week, then a few weeks.
Hmm.
Really, I would actually say I sometimes, especially if I'm, if I feel like the person may need more frequent check-ins, I'll ask them what they
Hmm.
prefer. Are you the kind of person that really likes accountability?
Hmm.
Because if you do, then I am happy to check in with you every couple of days. It just has
Nice.
to be a quick little check-in, doesn't have to be a full Zoom meeting or anything.
Yeah.
And there are some people who are really self-starters and they're like, nope, I don't need to check in every couple of days. That'll just bug me. So
Hmm.
I think that's an area where really, as you get to know your clients and get to be more comfortable talking with them, certainly, as you said, if you have an idea that you need to be talking to them once a week,
Yeah.
don't let them dictate it entirely, but
Mm.
do talk to them about what they feel comfortable with, because people have differences in terms of, like, don't bug me all the time, or, oh, I would love for you to check in regularly just so I remember to do my homework, something like
I
that.
love it.
So,
I love
yeah.
that approach. Yeah. You're so good
Yeah.
with words. I love it.
I spend a lot of time thinking about it.
That's awesome. 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 So, if you guys are interested in learning more and signing up for that webinar, it's moderndogbusiness.com. We'll also be doing another live next week on, let me see what topic I have. How
Online.
communication online is different than in person. Yeah, that'll be a good one as well. And then we'll do the
Yeah.
webinar, which will be really, really neat. So,
Yeah.
and it's all free. So free education. Woohoo.
Yep.
Awesome. If you guys have any questions about communication, post it in the comments here, and I know Megan will be around, and I'm sure she'll hop in and converse as well with some tips.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan. I will see you shortly because we have a meeting. Other than that, I'll
Yes.
see you online next week.
All right. Bye.